donation. We do rely on your support, and it's true. Every little bit counts.
AFM. You are listening to a universe of possibilities. This is Astronomy FM.
Coming up next, an Astronomy.fm original program. It's time for York Universe, a co-production of the Observatory of York University, Toronto, and the Voice of Astronomy. AFM Radio, AFM Radio, AFM Radio, AFM Radio, AFM Radio.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to York Universe. This is the Astronomy and Astrophysics program, written and presented by the students, faculty, alumni, and gosh darn friends, good friends of York University. I will be your lone host this evening. My name is Ryan Marciniak, and although I'm the lone host, I'm joined by three fantastic panelists, which we'll get to shortly. But tonight we are broadcasting live from the Allan Carswell Observatory located at York University in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. This is also Science Astronomy Night in Canada, where our lineup is all Canadian, even though our panelists are all American. Starting with ourselves, York Universe, and then on to a way back playback of Western worlds, Science for the People, and of course, Quirks and Quarks. York Universe broadcasts every Monday night at 9 p.m. local Toronto time or Tuesday morning at 2 a.m. Universal time. The York Universe production works in concert with our online public viewing program run by the Observatory team, which runs between the hours of 9 and 10 p.m. local Toronto time. So if you want to check it out, go to observatory.info.yorku.ca and follow the links to OPV. Join the chat. You can also find me on Twitter, of course, and I'm going to be checking the Twitters the entire show. So it's at Astro in Action or at York Universe. I'll keep an eye on both of those. Our broadcast is powered by and in a great partnership, a long partnership with Astronomy.fm, the voice of astronomy. For any questions or comments you have of past shows, or if you have suggestions for some new topics in the future, send us an email at observe@yorku.ca. And there we go. We're going to be getting into this. This is a very special episode of York Universe for me and hopefully for all of you. One thing that I make clear very often is that I love planetariums. I run a planetarium company, and I recently have made a lot more connections in the planetarium world. And as my location in Southern Ontario is very lacking in terms of large, well-established planetarium domes, the United States has so many amazing domes, some of which I've been lucky enough to visit. But we have three fantastic professionals who work in planetariums who I've had the pleasure to meet in person and now am meeting again digitally. And I'm going to introduce them all for you as we talk about planetariums tonight on York Universe. Now, our panelists are, in no particular order, we have Carissa Sidor. She is the theater technician at the Adler Planetarium in Chicago, Illinois, one of my absolute favorite domes. She's worked in planetaria for over 12 years, overseeing technology as well as creating and presenting shows. So, hello, Carissa.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Perfect. Glad to have you. Yeah, wonderful. Our second panelist, Heidi Kukta, is the Assistant Director of the Ritter Planetarium at the University of Toledo, Ohio. And I had imagined that the University of Toledo might not have a dome as large as something like Adler, but still a 40-foot dome, as Heidi tells me. Heidi, thanks for joining us. I'm excited to hear all about what you do.
Glad to be here.
And last but not least, Michael Mcconville is the president-elect of the International Planetarium Society, which is the world's largest planetarium organization. Michael has worked in domes for nearly 20 years, also serves as the director of customer outreach for the Evans and Sutherland and Spitz Planetarium companies. So he has many hands and feet in different doors within the planetarium world. Michael, thanks for joining us.
Evening, Ryan. It's a pleasure to be with you all tonight.
Wonderful. And I'm really excited to get into things. I do have a few questions for you to kind of drive our discussion, and hopefully we'll get to a lot of really interesting things because I've been very excited about this for quite a long time at this point. And of course, the first thing I have to ask is, we're kind of a niche area. You don't meet too many people, at least I don't know too many kids who grow up thinking that they want to be a planetarium operator. I mean, for me, I didn't get exposed to a dome at a very young age. Maybe it was different for you. And so I'm really curious for each of you, what was your first experience in a planetarium that kind of led you down this path and into the career that you find yourself in today. And Chris, I'd like to start with you on this one because I know you were recently at the Buell Planetarium in Pittsburgh and then have moved to Adler at this point.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, I just started here about a month and a half ago. But I grew up in Pittsburgh and got my kind of first foray into the planetarium world probably by accident. And I'm sure that's a recurring theme with a lot of planetarians is kind of winding up here by accident or stumbling into it. But I first had a lot of experience with planetariums. I was really lucky in that my school district, the high school, had a planetarium in it. So when you're an elementary school student, you get to take a big day trip to the high school and you get to go and see a planetarium show. And it was really amazing. It was a cute little, probably, 20-foot dome, but you would get a pillow and lay on the ground and look up. And it was this beautiful star ball that made this night sky. And that really made an impression for me. And eventually I joined my high school's astronomy club, so I got to use that planetarium and run it a little bit. But I still hadn't really thought about that as a career at all. I didn't really know that it was a career at all until I started as a volunteer at the Science Center in Pittsburgh, and it sucked me right in. As soon as I got into the planetarium there, I realized that was what I wanted to do, and finding a place in informal education, finding a way to get people excited and not have to worry about a lot of nitty-gritty details and higher education things like that. It was a really fun way to get people excited about astronomy, and I really fell in love with it and haven't left since, and I don't think I could ever see myself doing anything else.
Well, you certainly have fun with it. I very fondly remember your talk at the Great Lakes Planetarium Association conference with all the giant planets, like full-size scale representations. And I think half the room died when you brought in, Jupiter and Saturn as these giant, as tall as I am, 6'2", as tall as I am, soccer ball and representative of
we had a lot
planets.
of fun. We had a lot of fun developing that demo to show the scale solar system and using different beach balls and whatever other kinds of balls that we could find that would fit the scale that we needed. And we would use the planetarium as the sun. So if you have a 50-foot sun, a 50-foot planetarium dome, then how big are the planets? And it was a really fun way to actually show people physically the scale of the solar system. And that winds up with a 6-foot beach ball as your Jupiter. So that was always one of my favorite things that we got to do. It always gets a reaction when you push that giant 6-foot beach ball through the doors. You have to lean up against it to get it through.
That's amazing. And we'll certainly talk about that a little bit later. I want to put a pin in that because I want to ask you more about that
Sure.
when we talk a little bit later about kind of other things that domes are doing these days that are a little bit more non-traditional. Michael, would you like to go next? I'd love to hear a little bit about your background.
Absolutely. I started young as a astronomy addict, like went to the library, got the books, got a 60 millimeter Tasco refractor one Christmas, like the quintessential first telescope. And first planetarium show I remember seeing was grew up in Central Florida in Orlando and saw WSKY, radio station of the stars. And it was just the coolest thing being in the dome, seeing all this going on. And of course, this was, 30 years ago. So this was still based largely on slide projectors and baby food jar special effects and things. Really stuck with me. And then took a while to stumble back into the planetarium. I think it was the first day of freshman year of college. Went to go talk to a professor that I'd had in high school. Wanted to say hi. He was running an astronomy class. Asked me if I wanted to TA it, which the next semester was a student worker position at the planetarium, and eventually ended up as a full-time coordinator, writing shows, presenting, doing outreach events, the whole deal. All the while, I'm in school as a history major, ended up getting my master's in history and taught for 6 years alongside helping to run a planetarium. And so for me, it's always been this very like multidisciplinary, seeing things from as many different perspectives as possible. And the planetarium has always held this really unique place in my life as not just this venue for space science or earth science, but it's a gateway. It is a gateway to science and understanding. Universe does not need our help to be cool. We just get really lucky to be in this job, to be able to share the universe with people. And, you know, I've essentially been able to devote my entire adult life to the planetarium, and it's been a really good choice. It's worked out pretty well. And to be able to share that same passion and experiences with literally thousands of people over the last 20 years has really been fortunate to do so.
It is fortunate is the right word. You know, I think we all feel that way about being in the dome at any given time, interacting with people of any age and seeing that spark that we felt at a very young age as well. It's very interesting to me that you're taught history as well. I think, you know, astronomy is much deeper history in a way, but, you know, of course not human history. But I think it's such an interesting mix and an interesting dichotomy that it works out well. I think it probably did you find your history background served you well in your planetarium work at all?
I mean, it still does. And
Okay.
I think a lot of it just comes down to history and teaching in a planetarium, the way that we use planetariums nowadays. The central focus is about the story. And good history is good storytelling. And the best planetarium shows, the best planetarium experiences are about telling compelling and engaging and, dare we say, inspirational stories. And the ability to be able to do both of those, they have fed into each other for many, many years. Running a planetarium show, being able to have these kind of conversations like we're having tonight, this is about storytelling, and that really is at the heart of what it is that we do.
I'm thrilled to be getting your stories as well on all of this. I think I often hear that people like people. We like the stories of other people. We like to experience knowledge through the eyes of other people. So that's a very valuable perspective. And last but not least, of course, Heidi, are you still there, Heidi? We'd love to hear about your background and what led you to becoming a planetarian.
So I'm a little bit different than the other two. They both had experience with the older planetariums, the star balls, but I got into the planetarium community after we'd already upgraded to a digital system. So all my experience has been with that. And I actually came for a tour at the university before my freshman year and ended up being late because of weather and all kinds of other circumstances. And got a special tour through the department, and the planetarium caught my eye. So when I ended up coming here, I got in the planetarium and I've been working there for almost 8 years now. And even though I initially went in loving astronomy, wanting to go all the way, getting my PhD, all that, I realized pretty quickly that sitting at a computer doing research all day is not really what I like to do. And I loved sitting with the children and telling them the stories and seeing that spark in their eye when they learned something new and that they wanted to go explore later. And I just love bringing that to kids. And that's kind of when it turned me on to, I want to be in a planetarium for the rest of my life.
That's fantastic. And you really caught my attention with the visceral reaction to graduate school. I had a similar one myself, so I totally understand. But it's interesting. I wanted your perspective, of course, coming in the digital dome era, as you know, any new planetarium operator, any new storyteller coming into the field today is experiencing digital domes first. Did you? Now I know you certainly don't have a a comparative. But now, have you seen a lot of optomechanical domes? Have you seen a lot of any of the old style domes? Do you have a sense of the pros and cons of it? Like, what are your thoughts on? First of all, have you seen those older domes, and do you have any thoughts on that, comparing that to you coming up through digital?
Yeah, so I have seen several of the old domes when I was growing up, going on field trips, and then through planetarium conferences over the last few years. And I respect what they did. It's very impressive. I don't know how you'd use a baby food jar to do a lot of what they did. Very impressed by that. But I'm very thankful that I came in with digital, where I can code things and do basically anything I want at the push of a few buttons and, well, a lot of coding.
Yeah, see, that's an interesting perspective, is the level of control that comes with this digital shift. Really, I think you will all know this a little bit better, maybe Michael as the history expert here, but there was that big shift into digital. I would say maybe 2006. That was before my time even, but we're getting to this digital world. There's a lot more coding. There's so much more content out there. There's a lot more that's being built and developed. Do any of you have some thoughts on kind of where we've come from and where content in domes are going and the technology? This is for anybody. I want to get you guys interrupting each other on a regular basis here.
I definitely working at my previous place, the Buell in Pittsburgh, I would hear a lot about people who had visited the original building, which was this beautiful giant Zeiss Mark II star projector that looked like a huge ant in the middle of the room, and how much of an impression that would leave, and very much deservedly, right? These are incredible machines, but I really think that the switch to digital, there's a lot to show people as well, and we can really impress people in a very different way. And I've enjoyed a lot of the different things that you can do and places you can take people that you could not do before, trapped in like a two-dimensional space. And always had a lot of fun creating shows that really were able to transport people and show them that they're traveling, make them feel like they're traveling through space. I would always love it when I would hear kids arguing after shows like, no, we really were just in space. Were we really just in space? We really were just there. And you can really make it believable for them and make it that much more immersive.
You should never correct them, right?
Never correct. I mean, we are in space always.
That's it. Yes, we are all flying through space.
I mean, we're not in space, but it's a fun way to really create a reality for people that they wouldn't be able to get any other way. It's not the same as watching a movie about space. It's not the same as watching, a video about space. You are in it and you're part of it. And it's something really cool that we can do in planetariums, and, all these grand flights over volcanoes. Michael's going to laugh at me because he knows I like talking about volcanoes. But like, you can take people over mountains and mountains on other planets and all these amazing things. So the jump to digital has been really fun. And I think we're only starting to kind of tap what it's able to do. A lot of the time, the only limit is what your imagination is and kind of the stuff that you're able to do. And frankly, the time that you have to devote to coding, because it is a lot of work. But it's fun work.
Yeah, I mean, if we were to go back like a decade or more, I think that there was a feeling of planetariums that were coming to be defined by their technology, that this is a optical mechanical, sort of an old school projector kind of planetarium, or this is a digital planetarium, and that what took precedent over everything else was the technology you had in your dome. And I think we've gotten to the point across the industry, especially in I think the newer generations of planetarium operators and producers and presenters, that really all of these things, whether it's a $1 million star projector or it's a a video projector with the most basic software. They're tools. And the philosophy of how do we use the tools to tell the right stories, to make the best experiences. I think we're getting to the point where that's becoming the most important part. That is the paradigm that planetarians find themselves in, is how do I give my audiences the most amazing experience possible? And, Chris is right. Like, her love for volcanoes, I'd say my love for mountains combined. There is something about being able to go from a starry night and tell the old stories, the mythologies, and, the dot to dot constellation lines. And then now you're flying over like the Himalayas, and then you're landing at the Apollo 11 landing site on the moon, and then you're at Mars, and then you're flying through the rings of Saturn, and now you're outside the galaxy. And here's this data set that shows us millions of quasars and distant galaxies, and then the cosmic microwave background pops up, and now all of a sudden you've been able to take, I don't know, like an 8-year-old and transport them from their backyard to the edge of the universe and back. That's amazing. Like, it's mind-blowing when you are the presenter and that you get to do this. But to be a kid and be able to see your entire universe in front of you in a way that makes sense and that is beautiful and, probably most importantly, is fun. Like, that's how you change someone's life. That's how you change the trajectory of a third grader's life. That's how we inspire the next Einsteins and Curies and onward. We got this incredible power in the dome, and now we have the tools to do that even better.
I mean, Einsteins and Curies had no incredible visualization of this stuff. We can inspire 50 times as many Einsteins and Curies to go down those paths with the power of the dome. I completely agree with you. Now, you can certainly get a lot of pre-recorded programs and shows that are beautiful stories, well-produced content, just very inspiring, fantastic stuff. But is there still something to be said for the live presenter that goes on that journey, like takes that particular audience on their journey? Heidi, I wanted to know your thoughts on this. I don't know how many programs at your dome are more guided with a presenter versus a pre-written, pre-recorded film.
Every show that we do, we have at least some live component, because it's having that interaction where you get to feed off the audience and see what they like or don't like, and if they seem really interested in planets, and you can go a little bit more and explore planets with the kids, and it has a really amazing aspect of interaction and being able to tailor what you're saying to your audience in a way that makes them more excited about it. They might not be very interested about the Milky Way, but kids are almost always super excited to see all the planets and get to zoom in close and see what Mars actually looks like on the surface. And you can tailor everything you're saying by doing live programming. So I think it's an incredibly important part of what we do. So the pre-recorded shows do have their benefits.
Do you think it lacks? Do you think it lacks if you just have pre-recorded programs, or does your audience not know the difference and still feel great? Or maybe you have an audience that comes up back on a regular basis and comes to expect that. And that's kind of for all three of you at this point. But what are your thoughts on that?
I think there's a balance to strike for sure. And it's definitely been interesting it's been interesting to watch kind of the ways that the planetarium industry has responded to new technology. And specifically, it was around, 2005, 2006 that these full dome movies, these pre-rendered, shows were just starting to really become a big thing. And it was new and it was exciting, and kind of a lot of places I think would stray away from that live element And now it seems to be drifting back towards that live element. And there is definitely value in both. There are a lot of places that do these pre-recorded shows, but also add a live element to it, either at the beginning or the end or wherever it can fit. But that I think overall there is, there's no doubt that having a person talk to you and in a conversation, have a conversation with you about what you're seeing. And that leaves such a huge impact on audiences when they can understand things through just kind of an easygoing conversation with their presenter, and whoever is giving the show is able to put their personality into it, and the audiences can relate to that a little bit better. And it's more fun, I think. It's fun to play off your audience, and if they're really into it, you can start telling, really corny jokes, and they get really into it, and then they'll come up and talk to you after the show and ask you questions. So it's a really great way to ramp up that interaction and getting people into it. When they can see someone enjoying themselves doing a show, when they can hear them, smiling as they're talking, it makes that much more of a difference, and it kind of helps that information stick, I think, a little bit better too.
I also do goofy jokes in the dome, so I feel you completely.
Most important part.
Got it exactly right, because I think one of if there were positive takeaways from the COVID pandemic, or at least the depths of the COVID pandemic, it was so many planetariums, and it didn't matter if you were a big fixed dome or Ryan, like you, someone who operates a mobile planetarium. The shift to online and virtual presentations meant that if you showed somebody a pre-recorded video on a Zoom, they would absolutely tune out. There would be nothing there to connect them. And so everybody had to resort back to the sort of like old school of, well, we're going to do it live, and we're going to, in many ways, use the simplest tools possible, but we're going to tell a good story. People are going to get interested with it. And because of that interaction, I hate to tattle on myself, 10 years later, but there'd be a lot of shows, end of a long day, you've done 3 or 4 live shows, and now you've got to give a public show, and you're really not feeling it. You're ready to phone it in. But you do this live star show with, the knowledge you've got and the people in the audience and the give and the take, that dialogue you have with them, that at the end of that hour, I feel a whole lot better. I feel like I've given a great show. And those people walk out happy because instead of getting a presentation from me, they got a conversation and they learned something, not that it was, this is a X fact, Y fact, Z fact. It was, now I can go outside and I'm going to look up in the sky, and instead of seeing a multitude of dots that don't make any sense to me, I'm going to recognize, all right, those are the 3 stars in Orion's belt. And I know Betelgeuse and Rigel are on opposite sides there. And then I know how to find Sirius. And now I'm in Gemini. And now I found Taurus. And all of a sudden we're giving people this, like, we have taken the blinders off. And you get to have this conversation where now they are able to use the night sky, or they're able to think about the solar system or the universe in some way that has completely recalibrated their view of the universe that they live in. And the potential to have that in any show that you do, especially the ones where you get to have that live dialogue with an audience, like it's what keeps inspiring the presenters to want to try to do better and to do bigger and to reach more people. It is a rush. It is an endorphin hit when you end a show and people applaud and they come and they ask you questions. You are someone's, guide to everything, literally everything around them. You have unlocked that understanding for them. That's a pretty good personal feeling, completely selfish. but now you've inspired others to feel and do that way as well.
It's the rock star feeling. Right? Heidi, Carissa, do you feel the same? Do you get that same rush after doing the live show? You know what, for like 10 people or 400, do you get the same feeling?
Actually, I think it's...
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Heidi.
No problem. I think it's way better to do it for like a small group where they can ask you questions and make it more of that conversation, whereas it's a little bit harder to do that with a much, much larger group. So it is amazing to do the exact same thing, or at least try to, with those large groups.
Yeah, do you think it's lost on an audience of a couple hundred people? Like, is there a point where it's like, oh, okay, there's just so many people, like I can still be fun and be quirky and be me, but I'm not having that personal connection with them?
Yeah, I really think it varies. I mean, I think it depends on the audience just as much as, I've had large audiences that were dead silent, and I've had large audiences that were reacting to every syllable. I think I've had shows with 2 people that have been amazing. I think it really varies a lot, but it's fun when people play off of each other. And it's fun when you have a huge audience that is really into it, and they all see that everyone else is into it, and so they're reacting a lot more. And when you blast off Earth, they're all yelling, and that is an amazing feeling. I love hearing people react. I love hearing people yell out answers when prompted, of course, respectfully. But it's so much fun, and yeah, that it really is that rock star feeling at the end when everyone is wowed and excited and wanting to see more.
I mean, it's so easy to forget that oftentimes what we do as presenters when we're in a dome like that, it is a performance, and we are performers, and there is a level of theatricality to it. It's the way that you might set up a joke for 5 minutes, or that there is a cadence to the way that we approach a show, or it's the hushed tones when we're in a particularly dangerous part of the mythology, and then there's the fun, and it's this ebb and this flow of taking the audience on a journey that is not just educational, is not just entertaining, it is inspirational, all of that great stuff, but that we get to share this in a way that, at the end of it, we start to unlock, I think, understandings of the universe in ourselves that really do provide opportunities for us as professionals in the field to grow. We can all think back to 1 or 5 or 10 shows where something just clicked. Everything worked perfectly. And the way we delivered it and the reactions from the audience, like those are the sorts of performances that we remember. And to be able to give this level of experience, and it's a planetarium. I can't imagine that 100% of people that come into our planetarium domes are expecting the greatest thing they've ever seen in their lives. But if they leave with something that so far exceeds their expectations that they want to do it again, they want to try something different. For me, that's something that drives me. That's what keeps the passion going, is go out there and give the greatest performance I've ever given. Again, if it's for 2 people or 200 or 2,000, how we keep that attention, how we bring them along and get them to invest in us and the facility and the show, it is as much an art as it is a science. And there's just this feeling, these instincts, I think, that so many presenters have to trust to put on these shows that really can transcend, the astronomy lectures of yore, the 40s or the 50s in some planetarium somewhere, that this is this is truly an art form to be experienced.
Those instincts don't come up if we don't get to experience domes at a young age, if we don't get to see a show, if we don't get to have an opportunity to work in a dome, that kind of thing. I am just going to do a quick sound check. We are not a sound check. I don't know. If you're just joining us, you're listening to York Universe. We're broadcasting live from the Allan I. Carswell Observatory at York University in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. We are listening to three fantastic planetarians, Michael, Heidi, and Carissa, tell us about their fantastic journeys through the universe, at least the universe of the planetarium industry. But I want to take things in a little bit of a different direction now, and I've kind of alluded to this with some earlier discussion, but there is kind of this consensus among people who haven't seen a planetarium show for a long time, and this is very, very true in the Greater Toronto area because I hear this all the time, that the traditional experience of a planetarium is you go in and you hear the boring voice pontificating about the night sky, and that kind of style, and maybe the occasional laser Floyd show. I don't know. I still get asked about those too. So even though I've personally yet to do laser Floyd, as planetarium operators, what does a modern dome offer aside from the technology? What does a modern dome offer that's different from that traditional, sit upright and hear a lecture with this scene? What's different about modern domes beyond the shows, beyond even the presenters? And Chris, I'm going to let you tell more of the different things that you've done. I know the Cosmic Cookbook is one of my favorite things that I've seen you work on as well.
Yeah, that was a really fun project that I got to work on, and that was basically assembling, a bunch of different things that would let planetariums assemble their own shows in whatever way suits them best. But how to create a show and really integrate that interactive part into it. And a lot of what we were doing was, what kind of theatrical things can we add into a show? What kind of, physical demonstrations can we add to our show to supplement what we're talking about and give people another level, another dimension of what they're learning and what they're, there to hear about. And one of our, like you mentioned, the Cosmic Cookbook, the first show was all about the planets. It was a tour of the solar system, which every planetarium has a tour of the solar system. But it was really a thought of, how can we show people the size of the planets for themselves? And that's where that beach ball demo came into play. That's where, we would bring in those scale beach balls if we're using the planetarium as the sun, the 50-foot sun, then scaling everything else out. And you end up with a 6-foot beach ball for your Jupiter. And that was always a huge thing. And we would always bring kids up to the front so the kids can participate in that. So they're suddenly part of the show as well, which is a huge thing for them. So we have as many kids as possible to come up and be our planets. So that was always a great thing. But there's lots of different ways that you can kind of mix in different elements into a planetarium show so that it's not just, a tour of the night sky, which of course there's value to a tour of the night sky, and I don't want to.
They're still awesome. I
don't want to diminish that, but there are lots of things you can add. Another one of my favorite shows that I got to do was a show about Mars, but it was through the lens of the War of the Worlds radio broadcast, and trying to tie in, kind of take you back in time to the 1930s, and really, play some of that jazz music that they would hear and start the show with a demonstration of Foley effects that the radio team would use. And we would show people like, this is a jar and this is the sound of the spaceship opening. So listen for this in the show. And we would use a giant, a metal slinky to make laser sounds and show them that that's how you would get kind of a laser sound, and a theremin, demonstrating what a theremin is, and this really cool electronic instrument that can make some spooky noises.
I know a history buff who would really love that. As I look over,
I saw this exact presentation at a conference. It was like 3 or 4 years ago that Krista was giving with a colleague, and it was just the coolest damn thing I'd ever seen. Like it was amazing. And it's like that. Necessity is the mother of invention. Planetarians are very much that kind of folk. And I think Carissa exemplifies that in such a very real and clear way.
Oh, well, thanks, Michael.
Well, I was thrilled to hear you moving over to Adler. I know, I'm sure. I was just getting ready to be like, oh, I'll go visit Pittsburgh and actually go see Buell for the first time, because I've been in the Carnegie Science Center, but the planetarium was closed. I think it was under construction at the time. So I was like, oh yeah, I'll go visit Carissa and Buell and see what it's like. I mean, I can still do that now.
Well, you should definitely still visit, because
Mike Hennessy's still there. I can go see him.
Yeah, it's an amazing place. You should definitely go visit. But you should also come visit Chicago too. It's pretty great here.
Oh, I do love Chicago quite a bit. Heidi, how about your dome? Being, I guess, not in a giant city, what kinds of things do you find that you are able to do more things with your dome being smaller? Again, I apologize because I confess I don't know how big your community really is. It's probably gigantic, and I'm totally minimizing it. But I want to get a sense of things that you might do for a more dedicated community, or things that you do that's different in your dome.
Yeah, so we do have a much smaller community, with Toledo being a significantly smaller city than Chicago.
Yeah, generally.
But we mostly do university classes and classes for school groups. But I still try, one of my biggest ambitions since I took the position is to adapt to more modern, not just Sky Talks, adding in other sciences, art, even music, and trying to bring in basically all the way across the university, so that we can have more of our students actually get to experience the planetarium, what it can be used for, and see a 3D model of the Earth broken apart, or they get to make their own art and put it up on the dome and see a short video that they made in their class. And like I said, one of my biggest ambitions is trying to get that to happen in our dome.
Do you think it's hard to make that shift? I mean, because it's a university, I can imagine that there's kind of this, here's how we do it. We use this as part of our classes. Why would we do anything different? Do you find that there's some resistance as you're trying to do that?
That is very much what I'm running into. So we used to have art classes come in and do kind of what I was describing. But since the teacher who did that retired, I'm having trouble finding a new person that's willing to put in the effort to add that to their class. And even though they do the same work, adding that extra visit to the planetarium or seeing what we can do, it is a little bit hard trying to reach out to people and actually get them to find the value in what we're doing without first seeing it being done. I have experience in environmental science and astronomy and education, so I've been more able to bring people in that way. But other fields I'm still struggling a little bit with.
Well, it's a good project, I think, for you. How long have you been in the position for now?
This position I've been in for about 9 months.
9 months as the assistant director, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so 9 months is not a lot of time. You're still getting kind of your feet, but it sounds like you're pushing in the right direction. I think all it takes is a little bit of push, very gradually over time, and then you'll have pushed a boulder up a mountain in no time, right? So I'm kind of excited to see what's able to happen with the dome in the future. I think those art projects are happening more and more. I see a lot of dome visuals now, which is kind of again similar to those laser Floyd shows. I got to stop bringing that up, but it's that digital visualization of traveling through. I have an animation in my dome of a thunderstorm, and the kids love it because it's loud and it's exciting and it's like realistic, and it rains but you don't get wet, and they like that almost as much as they love all the traveling to black holes and exploring space. So I mean, I certainly think that there's room for that kind of immersive visualization, because a dome is an immersive theater.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential, and it's kind of only getting better with using the dome for other things than astronomy shows and just for visualizations, obviously. Now, I am biased, Ryan. I do love me a good Pink Floyd laser show. I have done several hundred probably in my life, in my career.
Oh my gosh, I'm jealous. Okay.
But I mean that too, like it's a unique place to see something like that. You can't just go to, you don't see that kind of thing every day. And it's something that leaves an impression. But, like watching a video of a thunderstorm, it's a unique, immersive environment. And it's very different from, experiencing something even in VR. Putting on a virtual reality headset is incredible. But there's something about not having, there's something about you being physically there and not having anything, kind of attached to you and being able to move around unhindered and see you're kind of in this really interesting environment. I think one of my favorite things that I've ever gotten to do was for a family who was experiencing someone who had a chronic illness and wanted to see the aurora borealis. And so we were able to bring them in and actually show them, teach them about the aurora a little bit, but also, actually travel somewhere on Earth and plant ourselves somewhere and touch down and actually look up and just watch the aurora for a while. And that was such a special thing. We got to actually give that to people that, otherwise wouldn't have been able to see it. And it's the ability to kind of give people these experiences that they wouldn't be able to have otherwise. There's so many different things you can show in that environment.
You made a really good point about VR. VR is very cool, but it's just you. I mean, right. Sure, you're in the digital world, right? But the dome is VR without the VR headset.
It's VR without the VR. It's a shared experience. It's something you get to do with a bunch of other people at the same time.
Friends, family, right? Those that are close to you, as well as complete strangers getting excited.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing to see, and it's an amazing thing to experience. I love sitting in an audience myself and sharing that moment when you see something really cool on the dome and you hear everyone gasp at the same time and you're all in that moment together. It's a really special thing.
Does it feel different to sit in the audience for a show that you've done? Like, I mean, certainly it does, but you've given enough shows where you're expecting certain reactions at certain time. Does it give you new insights to see those shows from the audience perspective?
I definitely think it does. It's amazing to see the difference between, I mean, it's a different mindset too, going from, working in my console like a little gremlin and coding everything, and being very focused on what everything looks like and what it sounds like. And then kind of being released from that and going 10 feet away and everything looks completely different. And I can see what the audience sees. And I can hear someone giving a show and, maybe a show that I've written or something like that. And I feel like an audience member and I get to experience that and I go through what I hope the audience goes through and those feelings. So it is very different because you are not focused on kind of performing. You are able to fully absorb the environment as it is and not have to worry about things breaking.
It's really interesting that you mentioned that about being behind the console, because I've never had that experience except when I visit other domes, right? So I'm always in the audience, right, elbow to elbow with the audience members and having those reactions and experiencing those reactions up close. So I think it's a weird thing for me to think about being behind this console where everything's coded and you have 3 dozen dials and switches to control everything. I feel like the guy in the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, right? I get that sense. But I have one more really important question for all of you that I'd really like your perspective on, and this is something as a newer. I wouldn't call myself a new planetarian. I've been running my company for over a decade, but I'm at least new to the planetarium community at large. I didn't really get to meet a lot of other people who were doing this because I just couldn't afford to go to conferences. I was in my own little world. But last fall, I met all three of you lovely people and a few dozen others at the Great Lakes Planetarium Association conference in Kalamazoo. And I found that the planetarium community was everything that I'd hoped and more, welcoming, kind, like really interesting, fun people, and actually even exceeded my expectations of what people who love doing the same things that I love doing would be like. So I am certainly biased, as I'm sure all of us planetarians have a lot in common: shared experience, shared initiation into the planetarium world, that reverence for the dome itself. But what do you think makes the worldwide planetarium community so welcoming, so kind, so willing to help each other? And I think, Michael, this is a good question for you to start with.
Absolutely. I think that it is increasingly, because the planetarium community is one that more than ever is reflecting the communities and the audiences that we serve. There are more women than ever. I would dare say under the age of 40, it's probably a majority who are women. We have a reflection of, whether it's people of color or sort of historically underrepresented groups in the planetarium world that now feel safe and feel accepted into a scientific world in which you don't have to be a scientist. We all have these incredibly varied backgrounds, whether it's here in North America or in Europe or throughout the rest of the world. We are sharing the universe with our friends, our family, our colleagues, our communities. And there is, I think, a shared understanding of our place in that universe, and that it helps to give us perspective in being understanding and caring and accepting. Because on the one hand, if Carl Sagan said it, I think, better than almost anyone else, we are these like infinitesimally small organisms suspended in a sunbeam on a dust mote. Like, according to the universe, we mean nothing. We are as insignificant as it gets. But the flip side of that is, while we might seem insignificant, we're able to look up at these heavens, and we are trying to understand how the universe itself works. And for us in particular in the planetarium world, we are trying to explain how the universe works in a way that others can easily access. And that is an incredibly important role to play in the kind of world that we live in right now. And the camaraderie that comes from being part of that community that helps to give the world an understanding of the universe. It puts things in perspective for us. So I'm incredibly pleased at where our planetarium community, where our planetarium world is going. And the people, Carissa and Heidi are two of many examples. The future is so incredibly bright, and we have so much more to share and so many more people and communities to reach out to, that the importance of the planetarium, we're coming up on 100 years. Next year, 2023, will be 100 years since first planetarium projector. And in that century, planetariums have become an integral part of culture. And the next 100 years, who knows what sort of potential we have, but we're in really good hands right now. And that future is so incredibly bright.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Michael. Now, Heidi, I wanted to get your perspective on this as a younger planetarium person. I mean, you've still been doing it for a good long time, but certainly younger than I am, and coming into it in the digital age. Did you feel kind of that same welcome from the community when you first started? Do you still find that you're meeting new people and growing in the community?
Yeah, the community is so welcoming. I don't know if other groups are like this, but going into planetarium conferences, you get to meet new people. And I think a lot of it might be that most of us who work in smaller planetariums or in university settings don't have coworkers per se. So we get to use these opportunities to be around people who are a lot more like us, and we can have be excited about the same things. And people are just excited to share their new ideas and feed off of each other, sharing their ideas and getting new ones and building up and up from there. And it's even a place to show off your nerdy side. It's kind of like being a kid again, and someone's wearing a Star Wars t-shirt and you walk up and like, oh, I love that. What's your favorite movie? And it's a lot more welcoming, especially coming from a physics background where mostly male-dominated field, especially at my university. And coming in and seeing that there are actually a lot of females in the planetarium, and they're helping to build each other up instead of tear each other down. And it has been a huge inspiration. Some of my biggest role models are in the planetarium field now. And it's people that I actually get to work with, not just someone that I idolize. And I really respect that aspect of the planetarium community. And I really look forward to meeting more people, because so far I've unfortunately haven't gotten to go to an international planetarium conference because the last 2 years have been canceled, or last 2 conferences. But in the future, I plan to go to more of these conferences, branch out from just GLPA into other organizations, and meet new people across the country and across the world. It gives us a lot of opportunities for that. And again, the community is super welcoming.
I'm excited for that too, Heidi, as somebody who hasn't attended an international conference myself. But what I really thought of when you were saying that about having other role models who are women in the field, you will get to be that for the next generation coming in, and that's really thrilling as well. That's really exciting so we'll get to see that. We only have a few minutes left, but I wanted to get thoughts on from all three of you. If you were talking to somebody who has never seen a planetarium show before, how would you convince them to come on in? And Chris, I'm going to put you on the spot for this one.
Oh gosh, how would I convince them to come in? Well, I think it's the fact that, we can offer something that you cannot see this anywhere else. You cannot get this from home. You can't do this, on YouTube. It's not the same. It's a really such a special place. And just, come on in and look. Sometimes all you need is someone to peek inside the doors and see, those rainbow lights on, or however you dress up the dome before bringing people in, and getting them.
Take a chance. Take a chance and do it.
Take a chance. Yeah. Just come and see what a special place it is.
Michael, how about you?
Even with a little extra time to think about it, to me, it is exactly as Carissa said. Hey, come and what's your favorite planet? What's your favorite thing in the universe? What do you really want to see? Guarantee I'm going to blow your mind. Guarantee you're going to walk out of here after learning something. And then probably the easiest way, free ticket. Hey, you can get in for free. I'll show you the universe. Come on inside. And just hope that our incredible skills will translate and they'll walk out with just the most amazing experience they've ever had.
Yeah, they'll come back. They'll come back once they do that. Heidi, last one sentence to bring somebody into the dome.
You ever flown through a nebula?
There you
Bringing
go.
people in and showing them that immersive experience of diving into the Orion Nebula and seeing all the stars forming around you.
That's it. That's enough for me, I think, but I'm also biased. But anyway, we do have to wrap up because we've already reached an hour. I swear I could talk to the three of you for another 3 hours, and we have just as much fun as we have the past hour. So Oh, I muted myself. Look at that. Isn't that magical? Well, everyone, you've been listening to York University Astronomy and Astrophysics program, written, presented by the students, faculty, alumni, friends like me of York University. I've been your host this evening, but I've been joined by Carissa Sidor from the Adler Planetarium, Heidi Kukta from the Ritter Planetarium at the University of Toledo, and Michael Mcconville, Evans and Sutherland Spitz, and the president-elect of the International Planetarium Society. It has been an absolute pleasure to talk to all three of you tonight. I hope everybody has a fantastic night. And go visit a planetarium.